Welcome to the Cybersecurity in Higher Education, Building Resilience in a Digital World. I'm joined today by two amazing panelists. I'm Greg Sawyer, I'm the CEO here at Cordit, and I have Anna and Nivi joining us today. Anna Aquilina is a CISO at UTS. She's been there since 2021. Previous experience includes significant roles as the Director of Cyber and Privacy at PwC Australia, Operations Director of Global Cybersecurity at EY, where we have a focus on expanding the global cybersecurity business. Additional positions held span across various organisations, including Director at Ernst & Young, Information Security Centre of Excellence, Head of Cyber Information at SOCA, National Manager for International and National Security Policy at the Australian Federal Police, and Counsellor for Crime and Justice at the British Embassy in Afghanistan. And Anna's career began with strategic advice roles in the Prime Minister's Strategy Unit and Metropolitan Police Service. An amazing career, and I'm very happy to have Anna join us today. Joining us also is Nivi Niwa, the Deputy CISO at UNSW Sydney. She's the Head of Cybersecurity Strategy and Governance at University of New South Wales. She is a senior leadership position and directly reports to the CISO. Nivi is responsible for the development, delivery and oversight of enterprise-wide cybersecurity policies, risk management, enterprise security architecture, controls assurance, security awareness, compliance and strategy. Beyond her professional career at UNSW, Nivi has shown industry leadership through the conception of an amazing program called the Tangible Uplift Women in Cybersecurity Program, which Nivi has been running for a number of years, which provides approximately 50 women annually the opportunity to be coached, to broaden and expand their experience, and hopefully pass the CISM exam at the end of the program. Nivi is also a winner of the ASA Cybersecurity Outreach Program of the Year, Australian Women in Cybersecurity Awards for the Most Innovative Educator, and Cordit Emerging Leaders Award in 2022, one a little bit closer to my home. She is also a finalist in Australia's Most Outstanding Women in IT Security at the 2021 Australian Women in Cybersecurity. As I said, we are honoured to have two amazing panellists join us today to close out today's sessions. So as data becomes one of the most valuable assets for institutions, we've talked about that numerously on the panels all through today, the costing of getting it wrong continues to grow. From a core perspective, we've just done the recent benchmarking, and the sector will have 1 exabyte of data next year, of which 20% of that sits in an unknown and non-mature state. Today's conversation isn't just about firewalls and phishing, it's about resilience, risk culture, and the future of digital trust in education. Let's start with what the real cybersecurity maturity looks like in today's landscape. Anna, UTS has taken a leadership role in the operational security. What's one critical threat vector that you believe most institutions are still underestimating?
Thanks, Greg. Probably this question is there's never just one threat vector that we're underestimating, I think. But you know, I could say still things like patching and remediating critical and high vulnerabilities remain something that I do think organizations underestimate, partly because I think it's such a common thing for us to say in cybersecurity, we need to remediate this. So it's how to make that, I think the challenge is how to make it fresh to people so that they actually do understand the urgency. But otherwise, I guess what I've been thinking of is more around privileged access, privileged users as well. I think increasingly they're becoming a threat vector that we need to be very, very conscious of. I mean, it's always been a thing, it's always been something we need to be aware of. But increasingly, I think with the range of systems, particularly between legacy, SaaS, modernization, you know, being aware of who has privileged access, where they have it, and how well we're managing it is really challenging. And just even trying to understand that threat within your own organization can be really quite difficult because it sort of varies across different systems. So that's one that I'm acutely aware of right now and really trying to raise awareness of and have a sort of capability building program and awareness building program in UTS.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Building on that, building the cyber resilience requires more than just good tools, about the people and process, and I'm such a passionate supporter for the people element there. What have you found to be the foundational elements of building a cybersecurity conscious culture across your campus?
Yeah, I mean, look, it certainly is all about people, including the threat actors being people. I think across campus, obviously, one of the challenges there is campus has so many different users and types of users. So you do need a multi-pronged, multi-channeled, multi-layered sort of effort to try and create that kind of cyber culture. And certainly it's, we can send out standard messages and things like that. I think they still have a place. At UTS, I've actually had really good reactions from digital screens that we put up and refreshed quite recently, the big screens around campus, as well as some sort of screens in the labs, etc. Also, physical posters. We're actually getting quite good tracking, like people read them when they're waiting for a lift, whereas often they'll ignore an email, I think, when it comes in. Also, cyber champions, we use that for a certain level of awareness. Every single managers group we can get into as a cyber team, sort of speak to them and tailor the message and really ask for their support and for their understanding, but also for them to own the risks sort of associated with their area and the people in their area. And then also within the IT unit itself, again, we're having a real focus on that cyber culture and skills within the IT unit, because so much of the foundational skill also lies there. So it is sort of multi-pronged, and then more traditional training. Of course, we still do that, and I think that still has a valid role. But I would be interested in other views on that.
Yeah, thinking about perfect throw there. Nivi, would you like to share some of your experience at UNSW?
Sure. From an awareness perspective, what we have done is we have a specific strategy that we had built in end of 2023, which is 2024 to 2026 strategy. And looking at the maturity assessment that we have done and the targets that we have stated for awareness, we have set a target of 4 on the NIST maturity model. And there is a variety of activities that you need to do to achieve a target of 4. So number 1 starts with a specialist role that we had recruited late last year, which will be focused on leading the awareness and organizational engagement. Now, it really depends upon how complex and decentralized the organization is. For UNSW, that's very true. And the ways of working as well. We need to be more enabling than more restrictive in that strategy. So having communities of practice that are running quarterly for 4 different communities, which is governance, risk, and compliance, 1 dedicated to developer coding security, 1 dedicated to vendor security risk assessment, and risk management, and the last one solely on awareness. So all of those things then to encourage participation, the competition for developer code security, engaging the senior leaders using the threat advisories, as well as allowing the members to take trainings. So we are rolling out AICD trainings for senior leaders, and doing tabletop exercises and simulations also help raise that awareness amongst senior leadership. One unique thing that the university has done, and in the policy, there is a specific attestation for training and awareness that each dean or DVC will maintain. So attestations across the organization have been signed off by the business unit heads as of now. So that's a very big win for UNSW. But like Anna said, the traditional methods of, say, phishing campaigns or the mandatory training awareness and compliance is required, not just from a policy perspective, but also for insurance purposes, managing insurance, and also any other audits that we have. The organization also has ISO 27001 certification. So these are some like university or enterprise level controls that we need to manage. One thing about that I wanted to state about awareness is that we've increasingly realized, because of the augmentation of AI and the increased use of AI, humans can no longer be treated as the first or the last line of defense. So it has to be augmented with technology that gives them awareness just in time. For example, the ICES, email security gateway, that has data science or AI ML based identification or detection, which will prompt the user at the channel, at the point of data going outside of the organization.
Yeah, that's really good that you brought in AI because it's such an overwhelming topic. Gartner hype cycle. I think IT professionals quickly got into the trough of disillusionment very quickly. It was going to solve everything, but it certainly provides some opportunity. It's certainly a new threat vector. The bad actors, they will get more sophisticated. How should our unis think about adjusting and utilizing AI to amplify managing our cyber risk? I'll give you first go, Nivi.
Sure. So number one is having an AI framework and standard across the organization, having dedicated leadership roles in the organization that will manage, establish, and maintain the AI governance across the organization. So there are two uses of AI, the use of AI by the threat actors and the use of AI by the defensive side of the organization, so adversary and defense. In terms of AI, my biggest problem is visibility. So if we look at risk from a risk perspective, and I look at the impact and the objectives that the adversary is trying to achieve is actually either data exfiltration or operational disruption. When I look at data exfiltration, pretty much all of the vendors currently or every single tool is offering a feature of AI. And when they are switching it on, there is no control hook that goes back to procurement or any kind of change assessment that happens to plug in the right security guardrails into them, which means that because of that lack of awareness across the organization, a user might think that it is okay to allow this data to flow into this specific engine. And that might mean data leakage depending upon what kind of feature it is. If it is a beta feature, meaning it is not being tested, it is not being validated or audited. And when we try to do that, and when you scale this picture across the organization, you're talking about 2,000 different applications, and you look at the picture from a helicopter view, you can see how big this risk is. So the lack of visibility of where the data is flowing today is the biggest problem that not just the university, but any organization would be facing. But more the universities, because they are quite decentralized in the procurement of applications. They procure subscription-based applications and then would be able to release that data without knowing or basically doing it inadvertently.
And the scale we face is always something that most businesses don't face. We have such huge numbers of staff and students and footprints that it's such a massive challenge.
And very different use cases, I think, which adds to that complexity. And I think, I mean, Nivi laid that out all tremendously well. I think the vendors actually do carry or need to carry more responsibility here than they do right now. I mean, yes, they're sort of introducing AI. Machine learning has been around for a while, but Gen AI is now in everything and everyone wants it. And as a university, in a way, we do have to embrace it, for teaching, for learning, things like that. But it is the governance frameworks can do so much, but there's a lot of focus on user responsibility, user awareness, user behavior. And then I guess for us to look more at which better network tools could we have if it's on campus or using our Wi-Fi, and then much more granular data protection sort of tooling, I think, which for us certainly will be a really big challenge.
So that's one proactive step that we could take is improve tooling to manage. Is there any other tools that we can utilize for either one, assisting us in managing the AI risk or utilizing AI to help us proactively improve our risk profiles?
Well, I think all tools, but initially, Anna started with one of the key issues of misconfiguration and the lag in the patching and not being able to manage one of the basic security controls very well. And in that space, if you look at vulnerability management, normally the thought goes to like a scanning tool, a vulnerability scanning tool at the operating system level. But I think it is beyond that. So you also have scanning tools at the code level. You have scanning tools for the cloud misconfigurations, like the CSPM or CNAP kind of capabilities. When you aggregate all of these findings and then you share it with your stakeholders, it's a massive list of patching that they need to perform. And it's also not aggregated, it's also not validated. They could be false positives. So in that space, the university is looking at something called as CTEM, which is a new term by Gartner. It is a product that aggregates and identifies threat exposure instead of just an exposure. So validating whether the threat is actually present by doing simulations from the outside, and that is able to help or enable the business to prioritize the actual risk versus other vulnerabilities that they have more time for. So that's one space, but also in the security operations space, where AI and ML can immensely help is the XIM capability, where because of the fatigue that all the continuous incidents is causing and causing burnout within the security operations teams, the security operations team needs to use or leverage AI and ML to shift towards level 3 operational management rather than level 1 and level 2 analyst roles, which can be taken by the AI capabilities. So the world is progressing very rapidly towards that capability at the moment. And I believe these two capabilities will be crucial, along with the email security gateway capability that I mentioned, where phishing is one of the key vectors, has always been. And apart from that, I think we should focus on the cloud security posture management, making sure the web application firewalls are in place and websites are behind secure certificates.
Excellent. Thank you. So we've got large research universities that really face complex data environments we spoke about when I first started this session. Everything from the high performance computing to international collaborations, and now, as we've just discussed, we're looking at new versions of high performance computing suited to AI environments as we move into research in that space. What are some of the unique security challenges at scale, and how do we navigate them? Open for anyone to jump in. I think
Okay,
Nivi's
I can
first.
go. Okay, I can go. So from a research perspective, I think the increasing regulatory obligations are one of the key concerns as well as challenges, because in a university environment, the business is very different. You can't restrict research, you can't restrict the academia to be able to innovate as they must, because for the business to thrive, these are essential. And how do we balance security versus business enablement is one of the key challenges. So we have to think out of the box on how do we achieve this management of risk, or bring this risk that we currently have to an appetite that is acceptable by the business. So from that regards, if you look at defense research, defense is increasing its research, its obligations from a DISP, Defense Industry Security Program perspective, to comply with Essential 8 Maturity Level 2. Now, something like that, that's very restrictive in nature and not very risk focused and not very response focused from a NIST CSF perspective, response and recovery focused, is not something that suits the university sector. So managing that challenge, and also managing the challenge of the increasing, probably there will be a point when organizations will be audited against the compliance to SOCI Act, although it is very low, but universities need to do their due diligence. Being able to perform research that is more than protected, say secret, top secret, you need to meet a lot of different security requirements. So mostly organizations are not able to achieve that, because achieving that and building an infrastructure like that is not conducive to the specific business needs that we currently have and the challenges that we currently have because of international student cap, but it's also kind of making us thrive and move towards adopting more and more research sponsorship. So we'll see how we go about it. I'm still watching the space.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to start seeing the AI-focused research at scale start landing as well. We had some interesting sessions in Perth on that. You
Could I
talk,
just, just add, Nivi covered most of that, but I think one of the really interesting aspects there, around the defense research and any sort of secure research is, the changing geopolitics really has a big impact there. And I think it will only get worse in terms of how we need to separate different types of research and the controls we have around them. But also there's a huge challenge, I think, around researcher and their behaviors, because if you sort of a typical researcher, as it were, does not take well to being told, no, you have to work in a secure environment, or you can't use that device, or you can't do this, that, on the other. So it's a real behavioural change aspect, which is going to be, I think, a much bigger strain on faculties and project managers in the research space to also help comply with, and at the same time doing international collaboration. Again, the sort of the fear, I guess, of us working with some of the high-risk countries is becoming very real, and again, how we both do defence research as well as joint collaboration with high-risk countries is going to be an increasing challenge.
Yeah, well, definitely interesting. We're seeing that the shifting politics in the US, apparently about $300 million worth of joint research exposed through that. And now we're seeing the overtures that they're looking at, seeing if we can now partner much more strongly with Europe, which will bring in GDPR, which most institutions would be dealing with. Yeah. But that's a whole new world that we're all going to have to deal with. It's not just securing the ones and zeros. It's all of those elements which make it challenging. We talked about that environment, the VUCA, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. But we talked about also, I think Nivi raised about the international students, the impact that has had on the sector with the capping of international students. We've still got a lot of digital transformation. A lot of the earlier sessions talked about the work that we still need to do. We still need to have a meaningful and powerful student experience, support the researchers, support the business in delivering services to those environments. What are some of the strategies for ensuring security practices aren't just tacked on at the end, but integrated from the start of these projects, but also still valid? I still recall a conversation where a board member was asked, when do we stop investing in cybersecurity? Yeah. How are our strategies to make sure that they understand that there's always going to be a risk-based profile and this is how we invest?
And I think it is important to therefore talk enough about the threat and how they change, but also how they change depending on the technology environment you have, because nothing is static. I sort of keep saying it. We also use the NIST cybersecurity framework, but let's say a score of 3 is good enough, but to even maintain a 3 takes a lot of effort and may take considerable investment. And it is a difficult concept, I think, to get across when individuals are more used to more static risks. So that's an ongoing challenge. And with digital transformation, we are also going through a new sort of enterprise resource planning project, introducing a completely new system. And it has been, quite hard work to try and embed relevant cybersecurity resource, get the funding to have a focused resource, but also then, it's a lot of team time. I think that secure by design mentality is something that's very easy to say, and people tend to agree, say, oh yes, we'll do the secure by design, but without necessarily accepting that may slow down things. It will cost a little bit more, even if it's still far better than, prevention better than the cure argument. But it's a counterintuitive argument sometimes, I find. But I think certainly most organizations like universities are certainly maturing enough that they're beginning to really understand and accept the value of things like secure by design and getting things right as much as possible in the front, and then just sort of dealing with the changes that come after that.
Nivi, would you like to add?
Yeah, just some. Anna has mostly covered, but some of the things that I would want to incorporate into the current practices that we have is lifting up the board level visibility of and reporting of metrics and specific metrics that can show the trends of how we are protecting. Like Anna said, spot on that even to maintain a trend of even like managing the click rates of the phishing campaigns or the reporting rates, there's a lot of effort that goes on to be able to manage patching at the levels that we should. Even scanning at the right frequencies requires a lot of um, rigor. But on top of that, every day there are new capabilities that are added onto the portfolio of the BAU operations teams. So making sure that those are considered as well in that reporting, and that shows the number of security controls that need to be in place from a kill chain perspective, layered in each stage of the kill chain to block the different stages of the kill chain for the threat actor to progress through them. So that gives a very good picture. Apart from that, there is a new concept of protection level agreements that Gartner introduced last year. They are very specific and tie the protection levels, the security capabilities, and the coverage to the dollar value. So for example, the organization requires to protect the servers, organization servers, depending upon the number of servers, using endpoint detection and response. And that would cost the organization $750,000. But the organization is only giving us a budget of $500,000. So for $500,000, the protection level will of course decrease, and it will remove out of scope many applications. And then you go about applying that same concept to the different controls that you have, or your minimum defensible controls, your baseline controls. And when you show that picture, it is a clear dialogue and an agreement between the senior management and the cybersecurity teams saying that this is what you get for your investment. So this is a direct investment conversation, but at the same time, the security team needs to build enough trust and credibility within the senior management or the senior leadership team that they are continuously delivering return on investment or business value realization of all the investment that has been made into cybersecurity. So these are the two ways I think to build that trust and control the inflow of the investment.
Yeah, thank you, Niv. You raise a good point. One that worries me from a sector perspective, as I spoke about earlier, is the data and the risk of data. Now, we've got shared reporting models, we've got the open data standard, the MortarCAPS data standard. How can frameworks actually support rather than complicate stronger cybersecurity and compliance? And happy with that being even the NIST framework as well.
Yeah.
Would differentiate from the Essential 8 because it's always difficult, but the NIST seems to be the one that everyone's settled on and very comfortable with.
Most part. I mean, I find just shared even in the sense that you have people who are going through the same thing, that you can talk about it and compare what's worked, what hasn't worked. I mean, there's a lot of value in that, and I think that's partly how collaborative the sector is.
Yep.
Mixed with the fact that we do have quite a lot of shared models, standards, frameworks, etc. And I think some are very subjective still, and you have to bear that in mind. I'm very wary sometimes of, for example, benchmarking with NIST because it's a qualitative assessment mostly, and it's quite subjective, and how one does that assessment varies quite a lot, organization by organization, whether it's a self-assessment or independent assessment. So I think you do need to be aware of that, but it still gives a common language, an ability to just learn, I think, more effectively and hopefully apply things more effectively. That's just one positive, I think.
So like I mentioned previously, along with the NIST CSF framework, we basically set targets for each of the 23 domains across the NIST framework. They are all different because of a variety of factors that determine what target we should go to, or is it feasible, is it not feasible, and where we are at currently, and what we need to prioritize across those different control groups. But one of the methods that we have been using is FAIR. So FAIR-based quantitative assessment we have been using for the last 4.5 years. We have in fact moved to a platform which is more AI ML based rather than FAIR based, and we have been able to adopt that framework. So it can tell a story using our top, say, 20 crown jewels and our key threats. So for example, the AI relevant threat, or in the future, the threat from lack of post-quantum cryptography from a quantum perspective. Those threats are currently required to be introduced into that model so that we can see what dollar value impact cumulatively we may have. And back to Anna's point that the threat landscape changes, this is a good way to show that picture, a visual picture of how that specific exposure has actually contributed to your total loss. And that includes your primary and secondary loss, which includes opportunity cost for the business. It also includes the brand value of the business as well. So those two methods really help well.
Excellent. Thanks, Nevi. Thanks, Anna. I'll just say to everyone out there, if you have got some questions, now is a great time to put them out and ask them from any of our panelists. It's not often we get to have Nevi and Anna together, and I'm really enjoying it. I've got another couple of questions I'll go through, but you do have time. So please, if you don't want me to have to start doing interpretive dance, and I don't think anyone wants that, then please get a couple of questions in for the session. Cybersecurity, so I spoke earlier to you both, and just the Quarter Top 10 is just about to be released for this year. And we know that, again, the secure digital environment is still critical for the campus. So making sure that our platforms are available and secure is key. What we're seeing come up, though, this year is the cyber strategy has risen once again into the top 10. It hasn't been there for a number of years. Why do you think cyber strategy is being focused on again by CIOs and CTOs across the sector?
I think that's a good question. It's interesting that it dropped off for a while, because I'm not sure it's more relevant now, but perhaps there's more awareness. I think there's also more demand from some of the frameworks, organizations, that you have an artifact that is a cybersecurity strategy. Sort of at its simplest, I think that is more of a known requirement now. Of course, the challenge sits, I think, in you have a cybersecurity strategy which is for the whole organization. So it has to fit the organizational strategy, the digital strategy, all these sort of layers of strategy, and presented as something the organization has to do, not just what the cybersecurity team can achieve. And I think there's still that sometimes miscommunication around the strategy. But yeah, Greg, I hadn't realized that had dropped off and now come back up. So that's interesting.
Yeah, me neither. Actually, I was just thinking this is something, maybe it's something to do with the maturity of cybersecurity itself within Australia, because strategies have existed for a very long time. Maybe the senior leaders are asking questions about investment and ROI, and like you said, when do we stop the investment? So the strategies are actually being used to substantiate that. And it's a very good sort of 3-year to 5-year roadmap that you put in front for endorsement. And that gives a clear picture to yourself and to the cybersecurity teams, as well as the entire senior leadership and other stakeholders, on how the journey for cybersecurity is looking like and what will be delivered. And then it can be measured through the audits, internal audits, on how the ROI or the business value realization is being derived.
I've got utmost respect for CISOs and CIOs. I see your roles, and I look at those report every year that comes out. I think Dan Maslin shares it and shows all the different elements of what a CISO does, or cybersecurity professionals. And I think CIOs are in the same boat, that I'm probably not surprised that these things come and go, simply because, again, you never drop work, you just get new work added to the growing list of things that you've got to do. So it's probably that it wasn't unimportant. It was probably just not in the 10 most important things. And AI has been all consuming. So it's probably reflective, again, that AI is a lot of the conversation. I'll finish off with one question to finish off. Looking ahead, what's one trend or threat that isn't on institutions' radars yet that should be? Or what's one that you think will be a burning issue for the sector in the not too distant future?
Burning issue. I think Gen AI, to be honest, is going to remain a burning issue for quite some time. I mean, we did discuss a little earlier around quantum. I think there's so many unknowns still around quantum. We know about the encryption side. I think we're aware of that, but many organizations haven't actively started to prepare.
Yep.
Some have, some haven't. So that could be one.
Nivi?
I believe AI propelling the commercialization of quantum computing, which will then lead to breaking off the current cryptography, and suddenly organizations seeing themselves as incapacitated to be able to move the dial if they are unprepared for such a massive event. I could almost see that as Y2K. It's something that needs to be very clearly considered, because right now, depending upon what exposure an organization has, they have certain threats that materialize, certain risks don't materialize, so they may have been lucky. But as soon as the data, the information that we are trying to protect, all of us, and the obligations that we have, and they are increasing from a regulatory perspective, from a contractual perspective, because the sponsors, say, for example, research sponsors that are critical infrastructure, that is one of the obligations that they place on organizations or partners like us, who are pretty much like vendors to them. So from that perspective, if all the data that we are trying to protect is readable in clear text, suddenly that's a big problem for the existence of the organization. So I would say it's an existential risk. And it is not that easy to make a decision on a massive, say, if you're talking about student information management system or a CRM system, it's not very easy to make a decision to migrate it, because they are integrated with huge number of other applications. So they may not be able to talk to each other when the quantum cryptography is upgraded for one system. So it's a massive architectural piece that needs to be slowly, using a roadmap, implemented. And therefore, I see that as a key consideration for most organizations, especially university, who have been operating in a less mature fashion when we talk about adoption of certain levels of ITIL within an organization and how stringently they manage it. So I think that's a key risk to any university that has been using legacy applications, custom code, and popping up applications left, right, and center.
Yeah, I like the phrase that you used, Y2K, because I heard YQK the other day. So when quantum becomes the big issue, and Y2K was easy because it was a date, the 1st of January 2000. YQK just seems to keep moving towards us, and we keep moving towards it. And our researchers are both solving the problem and creating the problem. So yeah, we are never going to be bored. As Justin Trudeau said, the pace of change has never been this fast, nor will it ever be this slow again. I want to thank you both for joining us today. It's my joy to sit here and listen to both of you. I suddenly have to realize I have to ask some questions at some time. So thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate you both giving so generously your time, and I've loved the opportunity to connect with you online. Look forward to our next connections in person. Thanks, Nivi, and thanks, Anna. And thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting us for such an interesting